Huskie Pack Podcast. I'm your host, Don Killingbeck, and I'm joined by no other than Chris Easlick, Alex, kind of big deal, Holto, and Principal Keith Green. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing today?
Doing really good, Don.
Spend the day with Chris Easlick. How can we do better?
I've never felt more special in my life.
Right. So, Chris, you're going to be a dad for the second time this week. What does that feel like?
Struggling to find the feelings. Very excited about it, but also very anxious going from 1 to 2. Because with our first one, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was baby sleeps, you sleep. Now I've got a nearly 4-year-old who doesn't. So it's going to be fun.
So, we were actually joined by parenting expert Denise Dowdell. She's the expert by default. How many children do you have, Denise? 5 children. What's the ages?
12 to 19.
12 to 19. Genders?
1 boy and 4 girls.
Wow. And Keith, how many kids do you have?
I'm light. I have 1 boy, and he is a senior in college. So I'm at the opposite end where Chris was. I'll tell you that.
Like very empty nesting.
Oh yes.
And then Alex, how many brood do you have in your? What do you got going on over there?
No kids.
None.
Over here. Yep.
I thought we talked about Alex, after you graduate with your master's, we're gonna start to work on family planning and any discussion.
Oh yeah. I mean, things are in the works. Pretty much when it happens, it'll happen. We're kind of excited.
Well, I'll tell you what, Denise, do you have any advice for somebody who doesn't have any kids thinking about it?
I tell you, I've got 4 teenage girls right now, so there's a strong part of me that says just don't do it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have 4, 3 boys and a girl, and they range from 24 this March to 14 in the end of this month. And so, tell you what, it's been an amazing ride. I will say that spacing is appropriate or important. Our first 2 are real close together. It makes it great right now. But most of the children are, 4 to 5 years apart. And that makes it a little bit more manageable. I think, Chris, you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, I'm glad in a way we never pictured having the 2 far apart. It was one of those we wanted them to be close in age, and then it just happened to work out this way. But I actually think it's good because her being first, she is a helper. And so we think, obviously that's going to be a little bit limited, but hey, can you grab mom a diaper? Can you grab mom some wipes? And she's really good about, if we run out of paper towel in the kitchen, I'm going to run upstairs to the closet, get the paper towel, and come downstairs. And she thinks that's the coolest thing in the world. So I think she's going to be a great help, but it's definitely going to be an adjustment. We do have one of each now, or we'll have one of each. So we'll have best of both.
Yeah.
Amazing. And one thing I'm sure Don can attest to is enjoy the ride, because it is a very, very fast ride. The diaper stage goes slow, but once you get out of diapers, hang on.
I feel like the only thing slow about that phase is the diaper bill in the formula bill.
That probably means that Mrs. Killingbeck probably changed all the diapers.
Yes.
The one thing that's
don't
working-
rat me out here.
The one thing that's working against me this time is we had our first in April. And so by the end of my paternity leave is I was able to go outside and, get things done in the yard and those types of things. My wife says, you can't escape to go mow the grass now. You're stuck outside. You're still outside. So she knows I don't do well cooped up. So that's always the hard part for me. So I'm looking forward to maybe an early spring in April, hopefully.
You've heard it here, folks, right here. On the Huskie Pack
Not a
Podcast.
call, just what I'm hoping for. So yeah, I'm excited though, but yeah, definitely nerve-wracking knowing you've got 2 instead of 1.
Right. Well, I think that comedian Chris Gaffigan, I think he does the best. He's like, hey, when we had our 5th child, what does that feel like? It feels like your boat is sinking and somebody hands you a 5th child. And I think that's whether it's the 2nd, the 3rd, it's the same analogy. You kind of feel like, okay, we're holding it together. And then now we have another. So does anybody have any crazy birth stories? I've got
Definitely not me.
not you.
Alex does not have any.
I feel like we got the spectrum. So my crazy story, Chris, and Huskies out there listening, is that, we're at the hospital, we're having our first baby. Dr. Wendy looks over at me and she goes, "Are you going to cut the cord?" And I go, "Wendy, if you'd let me, I'll catch him." And from that moment on, I became a labor fan. And so she let me help deliver our firstborn. She helped me deliver our secondborn a little bit more. And then, and I was actively engaged in the delivery process, but I wouldn't say I absolutely delivered the child. So she comes to us on the third child, we say, "Hey, we're pregnant." She says, "I'm not delivering babies anymore." She's our general practitioner. And she goes, "I recommend Dr. Joe." And so I said, "Can you talk to Dr. Joe?" I make eye contact with her and I'm like, "We have an agreement, Dr. Wendy. I help out." And she goes, "Oh, I'll let him know." So I go to the first appointment on the third baby with the doctor. And I was like, "Hey, have you ever had a dad show up on the first appointment for the third baby?" And he's like, "Never." And I said, "Well, I just wanted to check in and let you know kind of like what's been happening the first 2 deliveries." And he's like, "Oh, Dr. Wendy, let me know, and there's no problem. I'll let you help out." Which meant for our third child, completely, I got to deliver. Like there wasn't like he was there as a co-pilot, but it was more hands off than hands on. I was like, "Are we paying for this?" Or are you just like, "Is
Send
this
me
a
the bill."
consulting fee? Are you going to turn this into insurance and say you actually delivered? And so with all 4 of my children, I was an active member of the delivery team. And so it was very, very a memory that I'll never forget.
So the bar's high, Chris.
Well, you're braver than I am, because my wife, when we were pregnant with our first, she said, "You need to get over," because I had nephews at the time. And I had this fear that every time I held them, I was going to drop them.
Oh,
And so she's like, "You're going to have to get over
the dropsies.
Mhm.
She said, "You won't break them. They're
Right.
tough." She said, "I know it doesn't seem like it, but they're tough." And she was like, "You're going to have to get over that." So I wasn't, worried about the labor process, but I definitely wasn't as brave to just go up there and say, "Yep, I got it."
It was, I don't know if I've ever met somebody else that has had that kind of experience.
Right. Well, and having a wife that's a nurse,
Right.
there's
That does make a difference.
does make a difference.
So what's your favorite kid story? Do you guys have a good kid story being a parent?
There's so many.
Mhm.
I would say I really like the toddler stage. Everybody told me I would dread the toddler stage, but I think it's so much fun because every time I come home, just ball of energy, which can be much on certain days you're busy, but at the same time, it's also just, there's so much enthusiasm. There's so much like curiosity in the world around, just what's that? What's that? What's that? And there are some days where you're like, I need 5 seconds of quiet,
Right.
but it's also just the fact that she's so curious. She loves being outside and those things. I think it's way more fun than the infant stage. I
Mhm.
love the infant stage, but it's also just they're on the floor, they're batting the, whatever they call those play things. They're hitting the things, but I love the toddler stage.
I don't know about you guys. I feel like from the time they're potty trained, like 2.5, to the time they're 13, they are amazing. I loved all parts of that. I don't think there was any part that I was like, "No, I don't like."
Now, be cautious. I think you have a 14-year-old at home. You have a
I
13-year-old.
do. And it's funny because we always think like, he's the baby. And so we're like, "Oh, he's precious. And he's such a nice kid." And I'm like, "Okay, is he going to turn on us?" And because we've seen that, like where they become teenagers. All of our boys, or 2 of our older boys, had that phase. Hey, they're teenagers. Our daughter did not. So that's kind of interesting that you're dealing with that teenage phase from a female lens.
Yeah, it's some days it feels like World War III might be going on in my living room. I think it's partially because Isabel, our youngest, is 12 and the twins are 14. So there's 3 right in the thick of that hormonal stage.
Mhm.
Tough.
Yeah. Now, any newborn advice, although I feel like Chris, you've been through it once. I think that like Keith's advice, and it's you hear it all the time, and by the 50,000th time you've heard it, you're like, I don't need to hear that again. But I agree, is like slow down, smell the roses, never get too bogged down in like, oh, it's got to be this way or it's got to be that way. Really embrace the moment. I wish in some ways that I could go back and reparent, because I'm like, oh man, I'd be a more cool dad now than I was in my 30s. And so I don't know if you guys, do you feel that way at all, Denise or Keith?
Oh, I would think that all the time. If there's things that you could push the reverse button, reverse it back a little bit and change some of the things that you would have done. But at the same time, if it changed where we're at right now, I don't think I'd want to change that. So it's all learning. I mean, as a parent, we're learning as we're going too, just like we're teaching our kids how to learn as they go.
This time for me, it's going to be less fear.
Mhm.
First time, and also my daughter coming first, I wouldn't know the first thing about girls,
Yeah, right.
It just like, this is a whole different approach. And you feel that dad-daughter bond like right away, but you're also just, I know nothing about this. And then all of a sudden, you're getting ready to have a boy, and you're just like, okay, I've been through the girl stage before. There's more confidence in, okay, I'm not, the moment she used to cry was just, okay, you gotta take her back. And there's that feeling of like, does my kid even like me? So there's a couple month adjustment for that.
I remember the first time I was left alone as a dad with the first child. And we had it was an era, and you guys, it states us, is an era where there wasn't cell phones as prevalent. And so we had gotten a cell phone because she was pregnant and had the first baby. And so we had cell phones, but it wasn't like you were attached to them like you are today. And she goes, hey, I'm going to go to the grocery store. Do you have this? I'm like, yes, I've got this. And about like 30 minutes into the trip, the baby starts crying, and I'm like, oh, I got this. Like 15 minutes later, I'm like, I don't think I got this. I think I don't want to call. I don't want to show weakness. I have no weakness. This baby's not going to win. And so we get to like minute 25 or whatever. I'm like, I break. I grab the phone. I'm like, I cannot console this kid. It's not been a constant 25 minutes, but this kid is agitated and I don't know what to do. I've checked the diaper. I'm like trying to do something, and I call the phone, and it rings on the counter. She didn't take the phone. And I was just like, okay, look, I don't know if I expect you to rush home to save me, but like, I was like, I needed somebody to talk me off the ledge. And so, that was a rough, total probably only 90 minutes, but that 60 minutes of uncontent, was difficult. One of the things we do with the Husky Pack podcast for our audience is give advice. And so what's your best advice? And so we'll go around the table and people give their best parenting advice. For me, the number one thing is, as a parent, is training your kid to make good decisions. Like, how are you cultivating and empowering them to make decisions? For me, it would be as simple as like, hey, we're coming to the dinner table. Do you want to sit in this seat or that seat? So giving them choices to make decisions, but also guiding that we're going to be eating dinner at the table and not, somewhere else. What's the best parent advice? And you don't have to necessarily, I don't mean to put you right on the spot, but like, what's the best piece of parent advice you guys have?
I'm gonna follow you up with yours because mine's really similar. It's let them make their choices, and let them make mistakes and let them fail. Let them fall on their face. And because if you don't let them fall, they're never going to know what it feels like when they do fall.
Oh, that is so important.
I think the one thing we've tried to hit home is just, have you been a good friend today? She's at that 3.5, 4-year-old stage, so she's still learning. She's going to have days where, I don't want you to play with the car that I've got. I don't want you to play with the doll that I'm using.
Right.
But it's just, were you nice today? Were you sharing with your friends? did you share your snack? Those types of things. And seems to be getting it. It's a good place to start. So.
I always tell my mom friends who are having babies still, just like, don't sweat the small stuff. Nobody cares that there's smudges on your windows. Nobody cares that you didn't dust this week. Like, let that stuff go, because you're going to spend so much time cleaning up after this baby and cleaning up after everything that you're going to miss out on so much stuff. So, like, let it go.
That
It'll be
is such good advice. Do you guys remember, like, when we were in Chris's stage, what did your car look like? I mean, the amount of Cheerios. Like, you would pull out the car seat and you'd be like, who dumped a box of Cheerios underneath this car seat? I mean, like, you know, your car's temporary. You know, that relationship with your kids forever.
Ask yourself, how is that possible? How
Right.
did that Cheerio get there?
Yes, exactly.
There's no gap here. How did that fall in that spot? So
Oh, yeah.
I just thought of probably one of my favorite parenting moments was we had severe weather or a day that school was closed. And so I had to take her with me to the studio. And this is probably, she's 3.5 and old enough to where I could have her in the studio, have her little, tablet for distraction just so dad could work. And she would be really good about sitting on the couch in the studio. Well, it was a snowstorm. That's what it was. And so here I am, really important forecast. And all of a sudden, she migrated. And I could see it in the back. Can't wait. And so I'm going, all right, well, we'll just take it one step at a time. So I'm talking. And then in our studio, we have two, how I see at the green wall, we've got 2 television monitors on each side. So whether you're looking that way or that way, you can see what you're all seeing at home. They're on carts. So I'm seeing this little 3-foot body lean up against the cart. And so I'm already going, oh God, this TV's going to go crashing down.
You're going to be national news.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden I see it stop moving but then I look kind of out of the corner of my eye and she's gone. Where is she? All of a sudden, just right in front of the camera in an important forecast day going.
Was it on air?
Yes.
Oh, this is
So
awesome.
what I didn't notice until I went back and watched the clip was as I was doing this, there was about 30 seconds of her hand, just her hand behind the weight while I'm doing this before she made the run into the frame.
Oh.
So that's probably so.
And that was, so do you guys have like a YouTube clip of
I
that?
have it. I'll have to show
Oh my goodness. I bet you it's like in some blooper reel or wherever.
Did you
That
get
is
some
awesome.
feedback then through your socials?
you. Yeah, it was pretty good.
She was a bigger hit than dad that day, I bet, wasn't she?
Oh,
Between her and the cat, because I post the cat on social media. During COVID, I started what was called Frankie Friday. It's our cat Frankie that we got just before COVID. But it was one of those things where it started as, he was our first pet and people love pets. So I just posted it once. But then through COVID, it was kind of like cats are weird and funny and everything. So he kept doing all these weird poses around the house. So I'm like, okay, if we can break up, just the chaos in the world, we're going to keep posting pictures of Frank on Friday. And it just blew up. And so it got to the point where I don't post them as much now because I'm so much busier, but people would stop me in the store and it wouldn't be about me. It would be, how's the cat? Is he good?
Frankie.
He is far bigger than myself.
oh, that is awesome.
So between those two, I'm
Oh.
at least a distant third.
I think there's good things ahead for your kids. I'm really, this is a good human being right here.
She has a great personality. I know every parent says that about their kid, but she's very social at school as far as she's interested in what everybody's doing. She told the person who worked at the front desk, I'm sure it's the same here at school. A secretary runs notes down to classes and stuff like that. She saw her in the hallway and said, "Why are you not at your desk?" She's holding everybody accountable. But she just has that personality, always wants to be
To be an administrator
I say
someday.
future superintendent.
Yes.
I know, but yeah, it's just the
Oh.
thing. She's in that stage where you're going, I can't believe you just said that.
Oh,
Like, it's just so funny.
that is awesome. Well, kids definitely help us laugh each and every day. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for joining us on the Husky Pack podcast.